London, 1875. The Gazette lay open upon Baron Nathaniel Pennington's breakfast table, its neatly printed columns bearing news that turned his morning tea bitter. He folded the paper with deliberate care, his expression a mask of practiced indifference that belied the storm raging within. "Trouble with the markets again, my lord?" inquired Hastings, his butler of 20 years, as he refreshed the Baron's cup. "Nothing so mundane as finance, Hastings." The Baron's voice was low and controlled. "It appears my engagement is being announced." "Your engagement, sir?" Hastings paused, teapot suspended mid-pour. "Indeed. To a Miss Margaret Caldwell." The Baron's lips twisted into a humorless smile. "The daughter of Lord Richard Caldwell. I don't recall proposing to the lady, but according to this announcement, we are to be wed by Christmas." Hastings cleared his throat. "I see, sir. Most unexpected." "Indeed." The Baron rose, straightening his waistcoat. "Have the carriage brought around? I believe I must pay a call on Lord Caldwell and inquire about this misunderstanding." Within the hour, Baron Pennington's carriage rattled over the cobblestones of Mayfair toward the Caldwell residence, a respectable townhouse with gleaming windows and freshly painted shutters. The house of a nobleman clinging to respectability despite dwindling fortunes, if rumors were to be believed. The maid who answered the door seemed flustered by the Baron's unannounced arrival but quickly showed him to the drawing-room where Lord Caldwell waited, a glass of brandy already in hand despite the early hour. "Pennington! What a fortuitous call. I was just about to send a note round to you." Caldwell was a red-faced man with the bluster of someone accustomed to commanding rooms but now finding his authority questioned. "I believe you've already sent your message, Caldwell. Via the society pages." The Baron remained standing, declining the offered seat with a curt shake of his head. Caldwell chuckled, the sound hollow against the ornate walls. "Ah, you've seen the announcement. Splendid, isn't it? The match of the season, they're calling it. A match I knew nothing about." The Baron's voice cut like steel. "I've not had the pleasure of more than passing acquaintance with your daughter. Details, mere details." Caldwell waved his hand. "She's a lovely girl. Well-bred, accomplished. Plays the pianoforte beautifully. You'll find her most agreeable. I'm sure Miss Caldwell possesses many fine qualities, but that hardly explains why you've announced our engagement without my knowledge or consent." A tense silence fell. Caldwell swirled his brandy, watching the amber liquid catch the light. "You're a practical man, Pennington. Let us speak plainly. My finances are temporarily constrained. Your wealth is considerable, your lineage impeccable, and you've reached an age where society expects you to take a wife. So you've orchestrated this match to save yourself from ruin. I prefer to think of it as a mutually beneficial arrangement. You gain a beautiful, accomplished wife from an old family, and I—" Caldwell cleared his throat. "Well, certain pressing financial matters would be resolved." The Baron's face hardened. "And if I refuse this arrangement?" "The announcement is made. To withdraw now would cause a scandal that would harm both our families. My daughter's reputation would be ruined." Caldwell's jovial facade cracked, revealing desperation beneath. "I have little left but my family name, Pennington. I'm asking you, man to man, to consider this match." Before the Baron could respond, the door opened, and a young woman entered. She was tall and slender, with chestnut hair arranged in a simple but elegant style. Her blue dress, though clearly of quality, showed signs of having been altered several times. "Father, she stopped, her eyes widening at the sight of the Baron. "I beg your pardon. I didn't realize you had company." "Ah, Margaret, perfect timing!" Caldwell exclaimed with forced cheer. "Allow me to introduce Baron Nathaniel Pennington. Your fiancé." The young woman's face drained of color. I beg your pardon." The Baron bowed stiffly. "Miss Caldwell. It seems we are to be married, though this is as much news to me as it apparently is to you." Her grey eyes, momentarily wide with shock, quickly composed themselves. She straightened her shoulders and offered a perfect curtsy. "Baron Pennington." "How unexpected." "Indeed," he replied, studying her with new interest. At least she wasn't a willing participant in her father's scheme. That was something, he supposed. "Father," she said, her voice remarkably steady, "might I have a word with you?" "In private?" "Nonsense, Margaret. Anything you wish to say can be said before your future husband." Her cheeks colored slightly, but her gaze remained steady. "Very well. I was merely going to inform you that I've accepted a position as governess with the Hartley family. I leave at the end of the week." Now it was Caldwell's turn to blanch. "A governess?" "Absolutely not. No daughter of mine will work as a servant. It is a respectable position, father. The Hartleys are a good family, and with our current situation, I thought it prudent to secure my future." "Your future is secured," Caldwell snapped, gesturing toward the Baron. "You're to be a baroness." Margaret Caldwell turned to the Baron, her expression carefully composed. "I apologize, my lord, for this awkwardness. It seems my father has made arrangements without consulting either of us. Please know that I hold you to no obligation. I would rather earn my bread honestly than be part of any deception." The Baron found himself strangely moved by her dignity. "No apology necessary, Miss Caldwell. The fault lies not with you." He turned back to Lord Caldwell. "I will take my leave now. We will speak again on this matter after I've had time to consider the situation." As the Baron was shown out, he caught a final glimpse of Margaret Caldwell. She stood by the window, her profile illuminated by morning light, her posture straight despite the humiliation she must have felt. There was something compelling about her quiet dignity that lingered in his thoughts as his carriage rolled away. The next week passed in a blur of social obligations and business matters, but the Baron found his thoughts repeatedly returning to Margaret Caldwell and her father's desperate gambit. He made discreet inquiries and discovered that Lord Caldwell's financial situation was indeed dire: gambling debts, failed investments, mortgaged properties. The man was teetering on the edge of complete ruin. And what of Miss Caldwell? Reports from his acquaintances described her as quiet but intelligent, lacking in fortune but not in sense, and too bookish for most gentlemen's tastes. She had few suitors, it seemed, despite her good family name and pleasant appearance. In a society that valued vivacity and accomplishment in its young ladies, Margaret Caldwell was, by all accounts, unremarkable. Yet the Baron found himself unable to dismiss her from his mind. There had been something in her eyes, a quiet strength, a resignation that spoke of years of enduring her father's follies without complaint. It was with these thoughts still swirling that he found himself, one grey afternoon, directing his carriage not to his club but to the address he had discovered belonged to the Hartley family. The house was large and well-maintained, situated in a respectable neighbourhood. He was shown into a comfortable drawing-room by a maid who appeared startled by his title but efficiently took his card to her mistress. Mrs. Hartley, a plump, pleasant woman in her 40s, received him with evident curiosity. "Baron Pennington, what an unexpected honour. How may I be of service?" "I apologize for calling without notice, Mrs. Hartley. I've come regarding Miss Margaret Caldwell. I understand she has taken a position in your household." "Yes, as governess to my younger children." "A most capable young woman. Is there some problem?" Before he could respond, the door opened, and Margaret Caldwell herself entered, holding the hand of a small girl of perhaps 5 years. She stopped abruptly at the sight of him, her composure momentarily slipping. "Baron Pennington," she said, recovering quickly and curtsying. "This is unexpected. Miss Caldwell." He bowed. "I hope I'm not interrupting your duties." "Not at all. We were just finishing our lessons for the day." She turned to the child. "Emma, please go find nurse and tell her I'll be up shortly to help with your geography." The little girl nodded, casting a curious glance at the Baron before departing. Mrs. Hartley, with the intuition of a woman who recognized an awkward situation when she saw one, made her excuses and withdrew, leaving them alone. For a moment, neither spoke. Margaret stood with her hands clasped before her, her grey eyes regarding him with wary curiosity. "I see you found employment despite your father's objections," the Baron finally said. "Yes. I was fortunate that Mrs. Hartley was willing to overlook my lack of references. The position is comfortable, and the children are delightful." "And what of our engagement?" He watched her carefully. A flush crept into her cheeks. "I have informed my father that I cannot participate in his scheme. I wrote to the Gazette myself to retract the announcement, explaining it was a misunderstanding. I hope that has spared you any significant embarrassment. It was considerate of you." He found himself studying the simple dark dress she wore, noting how it emphasized the slenderness of her waist and the elegant line of her neck. "Your father must be disappointed." A shadow crossed her face. "My father has weathered many disappointments, most of his own making. He will survive this one as well." "And you?" "Working as a governess can be a difficult life for a woman of your background." "It is honest work," she replied simply. "I find dignity in that which I cannot find in deception, however well-intentioned my father's motives might have been." The Baron felt a stirring of admiration. How many young women of her station would choose honest work over an advantageous marriage, however questionably arranged? "May I ask why you've come, my lord?" she asked, interrupting his thoughts. "Surely not merely to confirm my employment." He hesitated, suddenly uncertain of his own motives. "I wish to assure myself of your well-being." Your situation changed rather abruptly. "That's most considerate." Surprise flickered in her eyes. "But unnecessary. I am quite capable of managing my affairs." "I don't doubt it." He found himself smiling slightly. "Nevertheless, I would be remiss if I didn't offer any assistance you might require. Your father's actions have placed us both in an unusual position." She regarded him thoughtfully. "You are very kind, my lord, but I require nothing. The only favor I would ask is that you think not too harshly of my father. His methods are misguided, but his concern for my welfare is genuine." The Baron felt a surprising twist of disappointment at her polite rebuff. "As you wish, Miss Caldwell. I won't intrude further on your time." He bowed. "I wish you well in your new position." "Thank you, Baron Pennington." She curtsied, her manner perfectly proper, giving no hint of any emotion beyond polite gratitude. As his carriage pulled away from the Hartley residence, the Baron found himself irritated by their encounter, though he couldn't precisely identify why. She had been perfectly courteous, had taken responsibility for her father's actions, had shown admirable independence, yet something about the interaction left him dissatisfied. It was 3 weeks before he saw her again, quite by accident. He had accompanied his sister, Lady Eleanor, to visit a foundling home she supported with charitable contributions. As they were being shown through the building by the matron, he heard a familiar voice coming from a small room off the main corridor. But the mermaid had the sweetest voice of all, the voice read, and when she sang, even the fish gathered to listen. He paused, peering through the partially open door. Margaret Caldwell sat in a chair surrounded by a circle of children, a book open on her lap. Her face was animated as she read, a voice changing for each character in the story. The children watched her with rapt attention, their thin faces alight with wonder. "Nathaniel!" His sister touched his arm. "Is something the matter?" "No," he said, drawing away from the door. "I just recognized someone." Eleanor followed his gaze. "Ah, Miss Caldwell. Do you know her?" "Somewhat. Her father and I had some business dealings." It wasn't precisely a lie, but it felt like one. "She comes every Sunday to read to the children," the matron informed them. "A most compassionate young lady. The children adore her." The Baron found himself lingering as his sister continued her tour, his attention drawn back to the reading room. When the story concluded and the children dispersed for their midday meal, Margaret emerged, nearly colliding with him in the corridor. "Baron Pennington!" She stepped back in surprise. "I didn't expect, that is, are you visiting the home?" "My sister is a patron," he explained. "I'm merely accompanying her today." "Lady Eleanor is your sister?" "She does so much for these children." "It's admirable. I understand you contribute your time as well." "The matron mentioned you read to them regularly." Her smile was genuine, lighting her face in a way he hadn't seen before. "It's a small thing. Books were my greatest comfort as a child. I like to think they might provide the same escape for these little ones." Before he could respond, a small boy of perhaps 4 years tugged at her skirts. "Miss Maggie, you promised to show me the picture of the ship again before you go." She looked down at the child with such tender affection that the Baron felt something shift in his chest. "So I did, Thomas. Let's look at it together, shall we?" She glanced back at the Baron. "If you'll excuse me, my lord." "Of course." He bowed slightly, watching as she took the child's hand and led him back to the reading room. When his sister rejoined him, she found him still staring after Margaret with a thoughtful expression. "She's quite lovely, isn't she?" Eleanor remarked casually. "Who?" He feigned ignorance poorly. "Miss Caldwell. And unmarried, I believe, though she must be at least 24. "I wouldn't know," he replied, too quickly. Eleanor smiled knowingly but said nothing further on the subject. That evening, as the Baron sat in his library reviewing correspondence, he found himself unable to concentrate. The image of Margaret, Miss Maggie to the orphan children, reading stories with such animation, her face soft with compassion, kept intruding on his thoughts. What did he really know about her? She was the daughter of a desperate nobleman, forced by circumstance to earn her living. She had shown integrity in refusing to participate in her father's scheme. She spent her one free day each week reading to orphans. She had a pleasant voice and grey eyes that seemed to see more than they revealed. It wasn't much, yet he found himself increasingly intrigued. Over the next month, their paths crossed with surprising frequency. He spotted her walking the Hartley children in the park and stopped to exchange pleasantries. He encountered her in a bookshop, earnestly debating the merits of different illustrated editions of fairy tales with the shopkeeper. Each time, their conversations grew a little longer, a little less formal. He learned that she had a quick wit and a love of poetry. That she had essentially managed her father's household since her mother's death 10 years earlier. That she preferred autumn to spring and thought the sea at sunset was the most beautiful sight in England. In turn, he found himself sharing thoughts he rarely expressed, his frustration with the emptiness of society gatherings, his fondness for his estates in the north, his secret enjoyment of novels his peers would consider frivolous. "You're spending a great deal of time with that governess," his sister remarked one evening as they attended the opera. "People are beginning to notice." "Miss Caldwell is an intelligent, well-bred young woman," he replied stiffly. "I enjoy her conversation." "I'm sure you do. I merely wonder if you've considered how your attention affects her position. Gossip can be damaging to a woman in her circumstances." The Baron frowned, suddenly concerned. He hadn't considered that his interest might complicate Margaret's situation. The last thing he wanted was to cause her difficulty. The next day, he called at the Hartley residence and requested a private word with Mrs. Hartley. "I hope Miss Caldwell has been performing her duties satisfactorily," the lady said after they were seated. "From what I've observed, she is exemplary," the Baron assured her. "My concern is actually that my friendship with Miss Caldwell might be causing talk that could reflect poorly on your household." Mrs. Hartley studied him thoughtfully. "Baron Pennington, I run a respectable home, but I'm not so rigid that I would prevent Miss Caldwell from forming appropriate acquaintances. She has conducted herself with perfect propriety. I'm relieved to hear it. Nevertheless, I wish to assure you that my intentions toward Miss Caldwell are honorable." A slight smile curved Mrs. Hartley's lips. "Are they indeed? How interesting." She leaned forward. "May I speak frankly, my lord?" "Please do." "Miss Caldwell is a remarkable young woman. Intelligent, kind, capable. She deserves someone who values those qualities. If you are that person, you have my blessing to call upon her here. If not, I would ask that you consider her reputation and future carefully." The Baron was both impressed by her forthrightness and chastened by the implicit warning. "Your concern for her does you credit, Mrs. Hartley. I assure you, I hold Miss Caldwell in the highest esteem." When he was shown out, he encountered Margaret herself, returning from a walk with the children. Seeing her face brighten at the sight of him, he made a decision. "Miss Caldwell, would you do me the honor of accompanying me to the exhibition at the British Museum this Saturday? Mrs. Hartley has given her permission for you to accept, if you wish." Her eyes widened in surprise. "The Egyptian exhibition? I've read it's quite extraordinary." "It is. I visited last week and thought immediately that you would appreciate the ancient texts they've displayed." A smile bloomed on her face. "Then yes, I would be delighted to accompany you." Saturday arrived bright and clear. The Baron sent his carriage for Margaret, and when she stepped into it wearing a simple but becoming blue dress, he felt an unexpected surge of pleasure at the sight of her. The exhibition was crowded, but their conversation flowed easily as they moved among the glass cases of ancient artifacts. Her genuine fascination with the hieroglyphics and her insightful questions impressed the curator who guided them, a normally taciturn scholar who seemed delighted by her interest. "You've made quite a conquest," the Baron murmured as the curator hurried off to fetch a particular reference book he thought she might enjoy. Margaret laughed. "Hardly that. But it must be gratifying for him to encounter someone who appreciates his knowledge." "You have a gift for drawing people out," he observed. "I've noticed it with the orphan children as well. They trust you." Her smile faded slightly. "Children who have lost everything need to know they are truly seen. That they matter as individuals, not just as objects of charity." The quiet passion in her voice moved him. "You speak as if from experience." She hesitated. "Not exactly. But after my mother died, my father changed. He was always fond of gambling and drink, but he became more reckless. There were many times when I felt invisible. Books and stories were often my only companions." The vulnerability in her admission touched something deep within him. "I understand that feeling," he said quietly. "After my parents died, I inherited the title at 22. Everyone saw the Baron, the fortune, the responsibilities, few saw Nathaniel." Her grey eyes softened. "And is that why you've remained unmarried? Concerned that you wouldn't be seen for yourself?" "Perhaps," he admitted, surprised by his own candor. "Or perhaps I simply never encountered anyone I wished to share my life with. Until recently." Color rose in her cheeks as their eyes met, and for a moment, something electric passed between them. But before either could speak further, the curator returned, breaking the moment. As summer turned to autumn, their meetings became more frequent. The Baron found reasons to visit the foundling home on Sundays, bringing books and toys for the children but mostly watching Margaret as she read to them, her face animated and full of warmth. One Sunday in late October, a sudden downpour caught them as they left the home together. They hurried to the shelter of his waiting carriage, laughing as they brushed raindrops from their coats. "Allow me to take you back to the Hartleys," he offered, suddenly reluctant to end their time together. "Thank you," she said, settling across from him as the carriage began moving. "Though I fear I'm not presentable enough for polite company now." She gestured ruefully at her damp hair where curls had escaped their pins. "You look—" He hesitated, then finished honestly, "beautiful." The word hung between them. Her eyes widened slightly, and she looked down, a blush coloring her cheeks. "Baron Pennington, Nathaniel," he interrupted. "Please, when we're alone, I'd like you to call me Nathaniel." She met his gaze. "Nathaniel," she said softly, and the sound of his name on her lips made his heart beat faster. "I think, that is, I believe we should be clear about what this is between us." "And what do you believe it is?" he asked, his voice low. "Friendship, I had thought. But lately, I've wondered if perhaps—" She trailed off, uncertainty in her expression. "If perhaps I feel more than friendship for you." He reached across and took her hand. I do, Margaret. Much more. Her fingers trembled slightly in his. You know I have nothing to offer. No dowry, no connections that would benefit you. My father's reputation is tarnished at best. I don't care about any of that. You should, she insisted. You're a baron. Society has expectations, society's expectations have never governed my actions, and I don't intend to let them start now. He squeezed her hand gently. What I care about is the woman who spent her only free day reading to orphans. Who faced financial ruin with dignity and chose honest work over deception. Who sees the person behind the title when she looks at me? Tears shimmered in her eyes. I never expected this, she whispered. When my father announced that engagement, I was mortified. I thought you must be like the other men of his acquaintance, concerned only with appearances and status. And now, he prompted, his heart in his throat. Now I know you're a man of integrity and kindness. A man who brings picture books to orphans and remembers that the smallest boy prefers stories about ships. A man who discusses poetry as easily as politics. She took a deep breath. A man I've come to care for deeply. The carriage swayed as it turned a corner, and he steadied her with a hand at her waist. They were suddenly very close, her face tilted up to his, raindrops still clinging to her lashes. Margaret, he murmured, may I kiss you? Her answer was to close the distance between them, pressing her lips softly against his. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened as he drew her closer. When they finally parted, both were breathless. I should return you to the Hartleys, he said reluctantly, though he made no move to release her from his embrace. She nodded, equally reluctant. Yes, you should. But neither moved until the carriage came to a stop before the Hartley residence. 2 days later, the Baron called at Lord Caldwell's townhouse. The butler showed him into a study much shabbier than he remembered from his previous visit. Lord Caldwell rose from behind a desk piled with papers, his expression a mixture of surprise and wariness. Pennington. This is unexpected. Lord Caldwell. The Baron bowed slightly. I've come on a matter of some importance. Indeed. Caldwell gestured to a chair. Brandy? No, thank you. The Baron remained standing. I'll come directly to the point. I wish to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage. Caldwell's eyebrows shot up. Margaret? You want to marry Margaret? I do. With your blessing, if possible, but without it if necessary. A slow smile spread across Caldwell's face. Well, well. It seems my plan worked after all, if somewhat circuitously. The Baron's expression hardened. Let me be clear. I'm not here because of your scheme, which was ill-conceived and potentially damaging to your daughter's reputation. I'm here because I've come to know Margaret as the remarkable woman she is, and I love her. Caldwell had the grace to look abashed. Yes, well. The important thing is the outcome, isn't it? Of course you have my blessing. When shall we announce the engagement? After I've spoken with Margaret. And this time, I'd prefer the announcement come from us. When the Baron left Caldwell's house, he directed his coachman to drive to the park near the Hartley residence. It was Margaret's habit to walk the children there in the afternoons, and sure enough, he soon spotted her seated on a bench, watching as 2 small girls played with a ball nearby. She smiled as he approached. This is a pleasant surprise. I have something to ask you, he said, taking a seat beside her. Something important. Her expression grew serious. Is something wrong? No. Quite the opposite. He took her hand, heedless of who might observe them. Margaret Caldwell, these past months have shown me what I've been missing all my life, a partner who challenges me, understands me, sees me as I truly am. I love you, and if you'll do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife, I promise to spend my life trying to make you as happy as you've made me. Tears filled her eyes. Are you certain? There will be talk. People will say you married beneath you. Let them talk. I know the truth, that I'm the fortunate one to have found a woman of such intelligence, compassion, and strength. So, will you marry me?" "Yes," she whispered, a radiant smile breaking through her tears. "Yes, I will marry you." He kissed her then, briefly but tenderly, mindful of the children nearby and the propriety Margaret always maintained. "I've already spoken to your father," he told her as they parted. "He gave his blessing, though I would have proceeded without it." She laughed. "I imagine he's quite pleased with himself, despite the roundabout way his plan succeeded. Let him have that small satisfaction. We know the truth of how we found each other." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Though perhaps we should thank him in a way. If he hadn't placed that false announcement, we might never have met. I prefer to think we would have found each other somehow," she said softly. "Some things are simply meant to be." Their wedding, held 3 months later in the small country church near the Baron's principal estate, was a surprisingly joyful affair. Lord Caldwell, his financial situation somewhat improved by his daughter's advantageous match, gave the bride away with genuine pride. Lady Eleanor served as matron of honor, having become fast friends with Margaret during the wedding preparations. Even Mrs. Hartley attended, beaming with satisfaction at the match she had quietly encouraged. But the most touching moment came when the newlyweds emerged from the church to find a line of small, neatly dressed children waiting to greet them, the orphans from the foundling home, each clutching a flower for the new Baroness who had brought stories into their lives. As Margaret knelt to accept their simple bouquet, tears of happiness in her eyes, the Baron watched his wife with a heart so full it seemed impossible to contain. How strange that a man who had everything society valued, wealth, title, property, had never known what truly mattered until he found a woman reading stories to orphan children. That night, as they stood together in the master suite of Pennington Hall, now their shared home, he took her hands in his. "Are you happy, my love?" "Completely," she said, her eyes shining with love and promise. "Though I was thinking about the children at the home. Perhaps we might establish a library there? Books were my salvation as a child, they could be for those little ones as well." The Baron smiled, drawing her close. "A library it shall be. The first of many good works we'll do together, I hope." "The first of many," she agreed, rising on tiptoe to kiss him as the moonlight bathed them in silver, illuminating the first page of their story together, a story of unexpected love that would continue to unfold like a treasured book, read and reread through all the years to come.